Hello, everybody. We are beginning our third conversation live with Russian musicians and artists. And today my guest is a Russian violinist, Ilya Gringoltz, who will join me hopefully in a couple of seconds. I'm just waiting for our guest to start watching our live and connect to us. It will be the Russian violinist Ilya Gringoltz. Yes, I see him now. I will invite him to join us. Just a second. We are connecting. Hi, Ilya.
Hi.
Greetings. Well, from London and St. Petersburg, because I represent London, but I'm now in St. Petersburg, and you're in Zurich, right?
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have heard that it's your first live, so congratulations.
Thank you.
On managing this new media in this hard quarantine world, and let's stay connected in these times. So it seems that we share the same city of birth and education. So I was wondering if you could describe your years at St. Petersburg Conservatory. What is specific about learning to play the instrument in Russia, and particularly at the conservatory in St. Petersburg?
I'll have to disappoint you. I never made it as far as a conservator. I left when I was 17 to go to Juilliard. So my Russian education was...
it was school only, right?
It was school only, but only is maybe not the right word, because it really gave me so much. It gave me, well, the best part, really, of what I can do on the instrument, at least physically. And it was one teacher, Tatiana Liberova, that really nurtured me through all these years. 12 years I studied with her from the very beginning until I left at 17. And she was the kind of direct connection to that Russian school, whatever it means now, but especially the St. Petersburg part of it, which basically died out by now. Almost no one that represents it. Very few people. And this is the kind of school that goes back to German, Spohr school, which I only really realized much later reading Spohr's books. And basically, all of the memories came back to me, from those years, being taught in St. Petersburg, being taught those things. So there's a direct line there from 1830s going throughout to 1980s when I started.
Could you then I see now that you actually are in the position to compare the education you got at Juilliard with, say, these memories of young years in St. Petersburg. Could you explain? And now you are yourself a teacher in Zurich. So I was wondering, it seems it gives you a good vantage point to compare, say, European school of teaching, American school of teaching, and, well, we'll say Russian school of teaching. So what could be your thoughts on the differences between teaching the violin between these three places?
It's difficult to say, because I was in Juilliard at a different stage of my life, so I needed different things, and I didn't necessarily get what I needed. I mean, some things I did, some things I didn't, but you can't compare a 12-year-old person and a 17-year-old person. They're worlds apart. And now I'm on the other side of this, and I can see that. I can see a student at 17, a student at 21. They're already a world apart. But when you have teenagers, that's every student is a mystery, really. So the whole idea of school basically disintegrates. It doesn't mean anything anymore. What I can say, though, in in Juilliard, the best thing for me was actually chamber music. It wasn't necessarily studying the violin. It was chamber music, which I didn't know anything about,
Mm-hmm.
when I was in Russia, because it wasn't really on the agenda. Yeah, but we sort of heard the Beethoven quartets. We knew they existed somewhere in a parallel universe, but we never heard them, or we never really had interest for them. And when I came to New York, this was really a shock for me to discover, oh, so many Haydn quartets, amazing Haydn quartets, and wow, Schubert. Oh, Mozart also wrote quartets, this sort of thing. And then, and of course, all the other things. And just being able to discover it for yourself, for myself, that was a revelation. That was really something I never had in Russia as a child. Um, I believe it's changing, at least in sort of bigger places. It's changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a thing now. But still, here in Europe, of course, it's maybe the center. It's maybe what you're learning the instrument to be able to do is play with other people, because that's really the joy. The joy of sharing is maybe the best thing about music making. It's
Mm-hmm.
winning a competition, or getting a job somewhere, although that's important. But it's about just enjoying the act of music making, sharing it with other people. It sounds like a cliche, but it really is. It's true. And that's, by the way, also that's what I miss the most now. This time now, since a month and a half, almost 2 months, not being able to share it with others. I can practice. I can post things on Instagram. I can record. I can sort of pretend that I'm still developing as a musician, but you're not really developing unless you are in one room with another musician playing together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what it's all about.
Well, yes, we are all subjected to this very strange experience, and I wonder whether we will be eager till the rest of our lives to stay together afterwards. Maybe the number of concerts would dramatically increase because everyone would be so eager to be together afterwards. What do you think?
Either way, I mean, we don't know. We are very bad at forecast, and very bad at seeing the future, and making any sort of prognosis. So whatever I'm going to say probably going to be wrong, but we're definitely going back to some sort of normality. And normality means communication, yeah, because that's what human beings are best at. They're really best at communicating with each other, and not necessarily via Instagram or Zoom, although that's great too. But the real human communication, and that means sort of non-verbal as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to come back. That's definitely going to come back. The question is when, and then to what extent. But I'm sure that we're getting back to concert life in one way or another. Wearing masks, not wearing masks, keeping the physical distancing of whatever, 2 meters and a meter and a half, whatever. It is going to happen, and it is going back. I'm sure of that. At a big price, we're going to lose a lot of what we've achieved over the years, but then we're going to gain it again. That's the
Mm-hmm.
cycle that comes and goes. And
Can we go back to your career? Just by coincidence, I am an anthropologist who studied migration of Russians to Britain. So I'm interested in how you adapted at a young age to live abroad and whether it has influenced your identity as a person and as a musician afterwards. Do you feel now a global citizen, or what is your identity now?
I don't identify myself with anything anymore, really. Um, Although I do have interests. I would lie if I said that Russian politics interest me in the same way that Swiss politics interests me. even though I'm a Swiss citizen at this point and I've lived here for 14 years. I am interested in Swiss politics, but it's a different sort of interest. I read Russian news every day because I'm very much involved in it inside. I have this somehow almost vested interest. Like I want to know how it continues. I want to know what happens. And I also follow the American news, funnily enough, because I spent 7 years there, and it's also it's a country I consider very close to my heart. It's a very different country now, obviously, than what it was 20 years ago when I was there. But I think the core of it has not really changed. And whenever I go there, I feel it. But if you ask me, about my identity, it's difficult to say because I have this. Technically, I'm Jewish, but to any sort of proper Jew, I'm not really Jewish because I'm not. I haven't grown up in. I didn't grow up in the tradition at all. I know so very little. I don't speak Hebrew or Yiddish. I've been to one Passover Seder in my life, and it wasn't even my family. I was just invited. When I go to Israel, I feel like I just went to another foreign country. I feel very good there. I like it, but I don't feel like I've come home. Like I'm sure many Jews feel when they go there. Russian, hard to say. Yes, Russian passport, and I've spent a lot of time there. And even when I went to New York to study, I just went to study. I still thought that I lived in Russia because I went there for holidays. I spent summers there. I spent Christmases there, and my parents live there still, and so it's very much like home. It is home, but
yes.
I wouldn't really live there now because it's also a completely different country than where I grew up, and not the kind of country that I like very much necessarily.
So it seems a combination of different periods and different compartments of your brain that you dedicate to each culture and country, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I put things into.
Well, let's go back to music. Of course, there is this very famous moment in your life when you were the youngest winner of Premio Paganini violin competition. So, to those who maybe didn't see you then, could you describe your repertoire, your feelings, and I guess how it boosted your career afterwards?
It hasn't boosted my career. It started it. I didn't have a career when I went there. I was just playing violin. And I was lucky to have won it. And then things worked like they usually do with young kids winning an international competition. You get picked up by an agent, and then you have concerts, you play concerts. But there's a bigger point there, because I've been now on both sides of this. I've been also the jury member for a few times, an experience that I deeply resented, I would say. I really didn't enjoy it. I thought I would not enjoy it, but I was really surprised to discover how much worse it really was. And to me, competitions are really the worst thing that has ever happened to music, because it doesn't represent anything. They don't represent anything that music or art stands for and what they're good for and what they appreciate. Yeah. It's in the competition, it's all about, even the best competition, it's all about winning and playing in a way that will make you win. So, of course, there are people that have won competitions and become fantastic musicians. There are many exceptions, and there are many people that have not won competitions and become fantastic musicians. The whole point is that we don't actually need competition. It's just a sort of way for agents to pick up people, and most agents are lazy and don't want to look for anyone. They just want to take someone that's already won something, so they don't have to promote them too much. so they have something on the plate already. But in my personal experience, I want to disappoint many people here, but I really hated every minute of being in this competition. I, it was a nice thing to have won it, but I didn't like playing there. I didn't like the feeling. I was very nervous, and it wasn't a good kind of nervous. When I play concerts, I get nervous also, but it wasn't that. It was just I was terrified. I was terrified of making a mistake, of sort of not winning, or whatever. There was a lot of pressure, and I don't think it's a good thing, frankly, for anyone, but especially for artists who should be creating in a free atmosphere. Yeah, and competitions are not about artists creating a free atmosphere. It's just well, Bartok has said it, famously, that the competitions for horses, and he was right. You can debate what the horses really needed, because they didn't choose to be in competitions either. But it's certainly not for human beings and not for musicians.
Well, that's a very drastic view of competition, a very interesting one and a very brave one. But then, when do you think you were formed as a musician with with your own sound, with the distinctive sound that you have, and with your own interest? Because the paradox of your life is that you combine interest in ancient music and in promoting a modern composer. So I was wondering, how has this identity formed in your career?
No, it's interesting. Obviously, much later than that. But I have a friend, a colleague, that said once to me that if you want to keep competitions, the minimal age has to be 27, which I thought was funny but very true. Because really, I think 27 is kind of a good age when you begin to form as a creative artist. Because obviously there are lots of wunderkinds and lots of child prodigies and fantastically gifted young people that as children they play like adults, and that's the point. They don't play, they feel like adults, but they play like adults because they're so talented and they can basically just copy anyone. And they hear Heifetz and then they play like Heifetz. As an example. But then sooner or later they cannot continue doing this. So every child prodigy has this moment when they have to kind of break everything and build it again at a different point. Usually comes after puberty at some point, sometimes during puberty. Depends. It's very personal. But then, if you're lucky, you come out of that dip, come back up again.
Mm-hmm.
27 is the kind of average age when you come out of it, and you sort of become adult as an artist, become an adult. And then you start, and of course, you continue developing and hopefully broadening your horizons and finding other things that you like. I mean, I've had interest in old music for a very long time, but new music came much later. I just wasn't really into it for a very long time. But I think in the last 5-6 years, I really, because I just heard so many great things that I didn't know existed.
Well, let's start with your interest in old music. You are known for very intellectual, even what we could call author interpretation, and I wonder, how do you prepare them? Do you do research? Do you talk with conductor of an orchestra that you will work with? Do you listen to the recordings of the piece? How do you prepare?
I mean, thank you. I didn't know I was known for that, but I think for an interpreter, musician, to interpret anything would mean just that. Using your intellect to read what's on paper. Because what you have is just black dots, some white dots, and you have to make sense of it. So you have to use your intellect to a point. And I think any interpretation that you hear that has any value is made by thinking, and different parts of your brain take part in it. Obviously it has to express feeling, but then you need to exactly know which feeling is being expressed. And that is the rational part of interpretation that's very important, that you use in the beginning, when you learn a piece. Sort of mapping out the piece, counting the bars, knowing where the accents fall, where the phrase finishes, where it begins, where the new one finishes and the old one begins. Sorry, the other way around. And then just deciphering all those things that you see on the page, because they can mean so many things. A single dot can mean 20 different things in different contexts. A fortepiano can mean so many things in different contexts. I mean, it's all about just sort of sitting there with the score and thinking a little bit. It's not so much about playing, really. I'm grateful for all the years I spent in Russia playing scales, so I don't have to practice on it now, and I can sort of study the score more and listen to my ears, because I think that can tell sometimes much more than like practicing does.
How do you develop relationships with the conductors? Is there a certain hierarchy between you two, or is it friendship, maybe a series of discussions? And who, maybe if you can mention the colleagues that you have liked to work more than others, who have become your cherished collaborators?
I think ideally it should be a partnership of like minds, people that agree on fundamental things. It's hard sometimes if you're sort of if you don't know a conductor and you're only given 2 rehearsals to really find those fundamentals. But it does happen. The big disadvantage of our concert live, at least until Corona happened, was that we didn't have so much time to get to know each other. In the best cases, we just got together a day before concert and sort of looked through the piece, played through it, had the general. That's it. Yeah. And so depending on the piece, of course, especially the pieces that you consider standard repertoire that everyone should be able to play just like this, and of course you play them, but then you basically just scratch the surface very often, and that's how it is. That's not my or conductor's fault. That's sort of the life that we found ourselves in. That's the world we found ourselves in. On the other hand, imagine having 10 rehearsals with a conductor that you don't agree with, and that can be rather painful, probably. So there's some advantages to this as well. Basically, there's nothing that's different about playing with a conductor from playing chamber music with partners. It's the same sort of understanding, same sort of, even if you disagree about something, being fundamentally on the same wavelength, same frequency. Yeah, so you can feel each other and you can feel each other's ideas sort of before they happen, before they occur. It's difficult to explain, but it's something that you feel. Timing, you don't have to say to a colleague, "Look, I'm going to make a read here and go ahead here." It's sort of what I feel, when I play with Peter Lau, for example, the pianist I work with for the last 20 years or so. We know what each other's going to do before it happens. Doesn't mean that we don't rehearse, we do, but it's a different type of rehearsal. It's sort of just feeling each other's frequencies a little bit.
So what you're saying that these things, even the better they are developed, the more non-verbal they become. You don't have to verbalize and to spend time in conversations, right?
Completely. I mean, with people that you can spend rehearsals not saying a word to each other or just minimal. and achieving something.
You have recently made recordings with the young conductor whom I'm interested in, Santo Matias Rubali. He is now a young star and will become the head of the Philharmonia Orchestra in London. I was wondering if you could describe him and your experience of working with him.
Oh, he's fantastic. He's really one of the top conductors already. I mean, not only in a career sort of way, but he really understands and feels the music in a way that most people don't. He's also amazing as a percussion player. I've had the chance to hear him play and see him play. Yes, he deserved every bit of it. He has this fantastic energy also, this nervous energy that's always in him. I think even, when you just talk to him, you can feel it. It's there, just waiting to bring out at any moment. And that's such a great thing to have when you're dealing with a big group of people. This energy to bring them together, to energize, to motivate them, to mobilize them. Very few people have that. As conductor, it's really very special.
Well, let's speak about your interest in modern music. I'm very impressed by the names that you have premiered. So, are you the one who commissions works from composers? Are you trying to get more modern works written, or are you the one who they are written for, or do you take works that have already been played by other instrumentalists and play them in your interpretation?
It's all of those things because there are so many things that have already been written and are not played, virtually not played at all, that I'm interested in playing. But I also like to keep the creative process going, so I'm welcoming any world premiere, any commission that I can help in any way, either initiate or just only perform. Now I'm going more in that direction, also looking into creating an organization or a small foundation that would enable more of this so-called micro commissioning. So really starting from grassroots and commissioning small works for small ensembles or solo. Or small, not necessarily small festivals, it can be bigger festivals as well. But I think the sort of starting from the bottom is important, especially now when so little is happening. And I can only imagine what it's like for the composers now at this point. And the future is so uncertain. But even if we take this COVID thing away from us, I think the system of commissioning, the system where new music had to fit in, let's face it, it's not perfect. Even in the best of cases, you have very small room for new music. If you compare to what it was like even 100 years ago or 90 years ago, when you had maybe 50% of new music on concert programs, and 200 years ago you had mostly new music on the concert programs. In the 19th century, nobody really played Baroque music, right? It wasn't fashionable. People played what was written now, or let's say 20, 30 years before. And that's still the case, in all the other, in jazz, it was still the case in pop music. You hear modern music there, right? And that there's no reason for classical music not to go that direction. Obviously, it cannot be to the same extent because we have so much heritage, and the more we go on, the more heritage we collect, and it's sitting there, and it should be played. There's amazing music there, no doubt, but it's taking the daily bread and the air away from the real creative force that's living now and needs to be heard. So So that has to be changed, I'm sure, and it is changing very slowly, but it is changing. And,
How do you monitor the existence of modern composers? Do you listen to everyone who comes to market? Do you go by word of mouth when somebody recommends you somebody? How do you discover new names?
um, again, all of those things. Word of mouth is very important. There are some people that trust with it, and while we don't always agree on everything, and we might have different tastes, but these are people that know much more than I do. I'm ready to admit that, and they give me sort of insights, inside information, and I listen a lot. Sometimes just randomly. There's so much on YouTube and SoundCloud. That's one good thing about our time, that every composer, no matter where, is given this source and can promote himself or herself and be
Mm-hmm.
up there online, so anyone can listen. It's all of those things, but there's not enough hours in the day. Actually, the more I listen, the more I'm amazed at how much creative mind there is out there, and in what different directions they're working. It's new music doesn't begin to describe what's actually happening. It doesn't characterize anything. It's not in the 30s, 1930s, you had amazing time for music, right? You had all these great composers that worked in a few very distinct directions. Now you have thousands of great composers working in thousands of distinct directions, which is great. Which is great, but of course the downside is that you don't have enough time for even 10% of those great creative minds.
Do you enter into the same partnerships as you have described with the composers you work? Do you sit together? Do you exchange emails before you play the work? Is it a long process of collaboration?
It can be a long process. It actually really depends on the composer,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to interfere too much. I know how sensitive it can be. There are composers that would ask you for your opinion. There's composers that don't care about your opinion. That's fine. The important thing is that they sort of write their heart out, and then I'll have the end result. And I will have questions that I will ask, and I'm happy if we can then collaborate after the work is
Mm-hmm.
done. But the process itself, I'd rather not interfere. Of course, if I'm asked something, I'm happy to answer. But this is a very sensitive, as I said, very personal sort of time for any composer.
Before the quarantine, the existence of audiences in the halls was taken for granted, but not anymore. I was wondering if you ever thought about why people come, no, well, to your concerts and to the concerts of your colleagues, and what is your relationship with the audience, and whether you are missing it now and maybe having new ideas about the importance of the audiences in the concert halls.
Well, I don't think it was really taken for granted. I mean, there was always this problem of filling the concert halls and in most places. So,
Mm.
of course, you're happy when you have a full house. Of course, it's strange when there are empty seats. It's strange when there are many empty seats. Very strange. And of course, we miss them now. I mean, it's the interaction. It's not a one-way street. We get something in return. The audience gets something. It's sort of this exchange that it has to happen. But I think maybe the problem of finding audience is a little bit the problem of targeting, and it's like Malcolm Gladwell says, horizontal segmentation, right? I mean, he talked about spaghetti sauce, actually, saying that people don't really know what kind of spaghetti sauce they like necessarily. Even if you ask them directly, you have to give them choices, and
Mhm.
And so if you give them enough choices, there'll definitely be enough people for any kind of spaghetti sauce. And that's the same thing with music. But that takes time. Going to people and offering them all of this, that means also a lot of PR work and a lot of promotion and a lot of money and a lot of time. But actually, you get the audience flowing in the halls. I think promoters who did that, who took the time, who invested the money, actually got that return. And being conservative as a promoter is maybe the worst thing that you can do. Really, like basically in business as well. You can't be conservative in business, because then you'll fail sooner or later. You have to be innovative, right? You have to always come up with something new. Same thing. This shark has to move, otherwise it will drown.
I wanted to ask if you think the role of music, maybe, and arts in general, could be reconceptualized after the end of quarantine. On the one hand, we know that it would be the last thing to open because of its sort of non-essential and involves lots of people. On the other hand, almost everybody has been using music and other forms of arts as to keep sane and to keep connected during this time. So have these thoughts of what music means to you come, and to us in general, come to your mind like now?
Also, this is a little bit maybe besides the point. I mean, everyone knows that people need music. No one really doubts that. We are not going to be back into concert halls for very simple reasons, because most of our audiences are in the risk group, over 65. Just the way it is. I suppose you appreciate it more when you're over 65. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's the way it is anyway.
Or maybe you have more money for tickets, at this age.
Could be, but that's also the case in places where it doesn't cost so much to get. But the fact is, again, it is going to be normal again. I don't think it's going to change all that much, frankly. The question for me is when it's going to happen. And then we're back into the whole conversation about the vaccine and all of that, which is not thinking anyway.
I was told, like I saw this post by somebody, that we are all now living in Tarkovsky Solaris, that we have to look back to our past only. And I was wondering if memories of your own performances haunt you, and whether you can remember the ones that keep coming back to your memory now.
No, not at all, actually. Nothing like that haunted me in the last month and a half. Nothing at all. But I did discover a lot of things, because I had so much more time all of a sudden. And of course, more time to spend with my wonderful family also. I don't think they ever saw so much of me. I hope they were not disappointed. Then I also spend more time playing Baroque violin, which I love, and I usually don't really have time to play it at all. Now I discovered also some new repertoire, things that I have to learn, but that I could just sort of discover for myself and play a little bit for myself. Played some violin duos with my wife, which is also fantastic. Normally we're playing a quartet together. Quartet obviously cannot rehearse there for simple reasons, so we did what we could do, the two of us, and just it turned out we have a garden here as well. So we spent every day in our garden now for the past 2 weeks. The weather is nice, and so we just.
Well, actually, you mentioned the violin. I was interested. Could you describe this Stradivarius violin that you're playing? I just recently saw an interview with Maxim Vengerov, and he said that Stradivarius makes you play music that the instrument wants to play, while the normal violin just plays what you want to play. I wonder whether you have the special relationship with your Stradivarius.
I can see what he means. I mean, that is. It is a very special sound that's not very pliable in a way. What I mean is it's so perfect that in a way you don't really want to do anything with it. Just want it to stay there. It is a very seductive sound, and it's a sort of temptation that not to do anything with it that I try to resist very much, because to me it's not so much about the sound. It's about the character, and the Strat can give you anything really that you want, but you have to try hard, and it's not an easy one. There are many doors with many locks, but if you open even some of them, that you get to the some of the treasures that are hidden within, that maybe lesser violins don't let you. But then just
So in a way, it's a treasure that you need to find a key to open. Yeah, this violin.
absolutely. It's not just there for the taking. You work.
Could you share with us, if it's possible, what are your plans for the nearest couple of years, at least projects that you are certain that will happen, hopefully, and you are starting to prepare?
Well, not now. Obviously, you can literally hear God laughing very loudly every day about our plans. So, and especially in musicians' cases, when you interview a musician, you mostly talk about their plans. And now, the plans that we do have, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, really? But we can hope. I mean, the things that are still in the diary for me for next year, they're rather diverse, and they are things that I feel passionate about. There's old music, there's new music, there's some lovely composers writing for me. I hope that it will take place. If it doesn't take place, it will take place eventually. So that's maybe the good part about now, that we are. I know you said about the past. I mean, maybe it's a temptation also to go back to the past. For me, now is very much about the now, and not about future or the past. It's really about the present, and that's I kind of appreciate that. Just living, taking every day for what it's worth, and then saying you take that day for what it's worth. It's what I think we're supposed to do. We're told to do in normal circumstances, but I think very few of us manage to do that really.
Do you keep touch with your usual chamber music colleagues that you mentioned, Piotr or Andy Ottenzamer, or
Yeah.
any others? And what are they doing? Are you exchanging the advice on quarantine with each other?
Yeah, I mean, we're more in touch than normally. There's time, and yes, we talk, we message. There's definitely more communication also with my family in Russia. We talk more at length with my sister and my parents. There's, yeah, it's in that sense, it's really a luxury that we did not have, probably will not have once it's over.
Well, maybe one of the final ones, I don't know if people are watching, and could you tell, or maybe what you say to your students to motivate them? What is the motivation to start to learn playing the instrument? And whether you think, even on amateur level, do you think it's possible to start at 20, 30, or it is not worth its while? Like, what do you recommend to people who are intrigued by playing a violin but never braved it?
Look, I'm a terrible motivator, to tell you the truth. Because I was not really motivated myself. I was growing up, so I didn't know what it was like. I just like playing the violin. I like the physical sensation. I told my teacher when I was little, I wanted to have more new pieces with, like double stops and chords and stuff like that. Because it made It was so much fun, and it still is. When I see a piece with a lot of chords, it starts happening in the brain. I don't know, like some hormone, happy hormone. So I don't know. It's very hard to motivate in that sense. I find like anyone will tell you, a psychologist will tell you, you need to have an inner motivation to do music or maybe
Hmm.
anything really, but music especially because that's so hard and there's so much work, and you really get the return only after hours and hours of work, and only if you really love it. As there are so many people also that spent the hours working and never really enjoyed it. That's maybe the saddest part. So you cannot really motivate from the outside. You need to feel inside. If you have it inside, you're 40, 50, doesn't matter. You have to do it.
So what you mean that being a musician, it's a match made in heaven. You either are one or you are not.
But I think it applies to anything really. Any
Mm.
any meaningful work, right? Work that it has to be hard, but it also has to be gratifying.
Hmm.
Has to bring returns.
Well, I guess maybe the tricky one. Do you miss the stardom of being a concert musician? I don't know, post-concert dinners, autographs from fans, trips, and a luxury, all these things.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have it like real stars do. It's classical music. It's a bit different. But yeah, I mean, dinner is not in the sense of eating, but dinner is, in the sense of sharing the positive vibe after the concert. That's great. And it's one of the best things about playing a concert is the dinner afterwards.
Hmm.
You know, that I miss that. Yes. Although frankly, I didn't really think about it that much. But now that you bring it up, yes, I actually do miss it. But I have to say, we're doing a lot of cooking at home, and that's very fun.
So, well, I wish you and your family a productive continuation of quarantine, maybe some safe walks in the neighborhood. It seems to be quite beautiful and picturesque, and greetings from St. Petersburg. Also waiting to get back to Mariinsky and to the Philharmonic Hall and to make my trips abroad for other concerts, and hope to see you maybe in live after one of your concerts in future. Thank you very much for sharing your life and your thoughts with me and with all of us who are watching.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, and congratulations on your first live.
Yeah,
uh, you might get into doing them more afterwards,
yeah, it was
you
fun.
know.
Absolutely.
Спасибо большое.
I see.
Все хорошо.